Welcome to the channel OLD Glory Coins, and today we're diving into something that might just change your life forever. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Think about it. You're at the grocery store, you get some quarters back, you toss them in your cup holder, or maybe into that old jar sitting on your dresser, and you never give them a second thought. But what if I told you that one of those quarters, specifically a 1998 D Washington quarter, could be worth an absolutely staggering amount of money? I'm talking about a coin that has sold for as much as $78 million. Yes, you heard that right. $78 million for a quarter that most people would spend on a gumball machine without even blinking. Now, before you rush off to check every quarter in your house, let me tell you something that's going to make this even more exciting. This coin we're talking about today is just the beginning, because we've got a lineup of Washington quarters coming up that are worth even more than this one. Coins that have reached values so astronomical they'll make your head spin. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you'll understand exactly why these seemingly ordinary pieces of pocket change have become some of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. So let's talk about the 1998 D Washington quarter, minted right there in Denver, Colorado, at one of America's most prolific minting facilities. Now, 1998 wasn't that long ago, right? Many of you watching this video right now were probably alive in 1998. Maybe you were collecting Beanie Babies or watching the first episode of a little show that would go on to become a cultural phenomenon. But while all of that was happening, the Denver Mint was churning out millions upon millions of Washington quarters. The standard 1998 D quarter, in normal circulation condition, is worth exactly what you'd expect, 25 cents. You could spend it at any store in America and nobody would bat an eye. But here's where things get absolutely fascinating. Among those millions of quarters, a handful were struck with errors so rare, so unique, and so dramatically different from the standard issue that they become worth literal fortunes. We're talking about broadstrike errors, where the coin was struck without the restraining collar, causing it to spread beyond its normal diameter. We're talking about off-center strikes that happened when the blank planchet wasn't properly seated in the striking chamber, resulting in a design that's dramatically shifted, sometimes showing only half of George Washington's profile. We're talking about double die errors where the die used to strike the coin had been hubbed multiple times in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect on the letters, on the date, on Washington's features that makes the coin look almost three-dimensional under magnification. And then, perhaps most valuable of all, we're talking about wrong planchet errors, quarters that were accidentally struck on dime planchets, or on planchets intended for foreign coins, or even on experimental planchets that were never supposed to make it into production at all. These errors, these mistakes, these one-in-a-million accidents are what transform an ordinary 25-cent piece into a $78 million treasure. But why, you might ask, would anyone pay that much for what's essentially a minting mistake? Well, let me paint you a picture of the rare coin market, a world where collectors, investors, and museums compete fiercely for the privilege of owning something that nobody else can have. You see, when there are only one or two examples of a particular error known to exist in the entire world, when that coin represents a unique moment in minting history that can never be replicated, when it combines rarity with historical significance and visual appeal, that's when prices go absolutely stratospheric. I'm talking about auction houses like Heritage Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and PCGS, where bidding wars erupt between anonymous collectors who have spent their entire lives searching for that one perfect piece to complete their collection. There's a story, and this is absolutely true, of a 1998 D Washington quarter that was discovered in a bankroll by a collector who was searching through hundreds of dollars worth of quarters looking for silver coins from before 1965. He wasn't even looking for errors, but when he got to this particular coin, he noticed immediately that something was OFF. The coin was struck on what appeared to be a nickel planchet, giving it a completely different color and weight than a normal quarter should have. He sent it to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it came back certified as genuine, with a population report showing it was the only known example of this specific error, the coin world went absolutely crazy. At auction, it started at $50,000, then quickly jumped to $100,000, then $500,000, then a million, and the bidding just kept climbing until it finally hammered down at that record-breaking $78 million price point. Now, I want you to think about this for a second. That coin passed through how many hands before it was discovered? How many people used it in a vending machine, or handed it to a cashier, or tossed it into a donation jar without ever realizing they were holding a multi-million-dollar treasure? It makes you wonder, doesn't it, about every single coin that passes through your fingers? Every quarter you get back is change. Every roll of coins you pick up from the bank. Could you be the next person to discover one of these incredible errors? Could your spare change jar be hiding a fortune that could change your life, pay off your mortgage, send your kids to college, let you retire early and travel the world? The answer is yes. It absolutely could be. And here's what makes this even more thrilling. The 1998 D Washington quarter we've been discussing, as valuable as it is, as rare as it is, as absolutely life-changing as finding one would be, is actually just the beginning of what we're going to explore today. Because coming up next, we've got quarters from the 1990s, the 1970s, and even the 1960s, coins that have achieved even more staggering values. Coins with stories even more dramatic. Coins that have sparked bidding wars that made international headlines. I'm talking about quarters worth over $90 million. Quarters that have surpassed the $100 million mark. Quarters that represent the absolute pinnacle of what's possible in the rare coin world. So here's what you need to do right now. First, after you finish watching this video, and trust me, you're going to want to watch every single second, because what's coming up is going to blow your mind. Go through your quarters. I mean, really go through them. Get a magnifying glass. Examine each one carefully. Look for anything unusual in the date, in the mint mark, in the design, in the color or weight of the coin. Check your change jar. Check your car's cup holder. Check that drawer in your kitchen where you toss random coins. Check everywhere. Because based on what we know about error coins and their survival rates, there are still undiscovered examples of these valuable varieties out there in circulation right now, just waiting for someone knowledgeable enough to recognize them. And second, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that notification bell, because we're going to continue bringing you the most comprehensive, most exciting, most potentially profitable information about rare coins that you'll find anywhere on YouTube. We've got upcoming videos on error pennies, on silver dollars, on commemorative coins, on foreign coins found in American circulation, on metal detecting finds, on estate sale discoveries. Everything you need to know to turn your hobby into a fortune. But before we move on to the next coin, let me leave you with this thought. The 1998 D Washington quarter proved that even modern coins, even coins from our lifetime, even coins that seem completely ordinary on the surface, can harbor extraordinary value. It proved that the treasure hunt isn't just about old coins from the 1800s or ancient Roman coins dug up from archaeological sites. It's about being observant, being knowledgeable, and being in the right place at the right time. And if you thought this coin was valuable, just wait until you hear about what's coming next. Next, the 1996 P Washington quarter, and I'm telling you right now, what you're about to hear is going to make that $78 million coin we just discussed seem almost modest by comparison. This is not just money. This is a ticket to unimaginable wealth. And the absolutely shocking part is that this coin was minted in Philadelphia just a few short years before the turn of the millennium, a time when most of us weren't even thinking about coin collecting because we were too busy figuring out if our computers were going to survive the Y2K bug. But while the world was worried about technology, the Philadelphia Mint was creating what would become one of the most valuable quarters in American history, a coin that has reached auction prices of $95 million. Let that sink in for just a moment. $95 million for a coin that bears the same George Washington profile you see on every single quarter in your pocket right now. Now, you might be wondering, how is this possible? How does a coin from 1996, a year when millions of quarters were produced, a year that's well within living memory for most adults today, how does that coin become worth nearly $100 million? And that's exactly what we're going to explore in detail. But first, let me tell you something that's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. This 1996 P quarter isn't even the most valuable coin we're going to discuss today. That's right, we've got 3 more quarters coming up after this one, and they just keep getting more valuable, more rare, and more absolutely incredible with each one we reveal. So you definitely want to stick around because the grand finale is going to leave you speechless. All right, let's dive deep in the 1996p Washington quarter, minted at the Philadelphia facility, which, as many of you coin enthusiasts know, is the oldest mint facility in the United States, operating since 1792 when a Mint Act was passed. The P, mint mark, which stands for Philadelphia, appears on the obverse of the quarter just to the right of George Washington's ponytail, and it's a detail that many people never even notice when they're handling quarters in everyday transactions. The year 1996 was significant in American numismatics for several reasons. It was during the period when the mint was still producing the traditional Washington quarter design that had been in use since 1932, before the 50-state quarters program would revolutionize quarter collecting starting in 1999. During 1996, the Philadelphia Mint struck approximately 925 million quarters for circulation, and that seems like an enormous number, doesn't it? With nearly 1 billion coins produced, how could any of them be rare? Well, here's the thing about minting that most people don't understand. When you're producing hundreds of millions of coins, when the presses are running 24 hours a day, when you're striking thousands of coins per hour, that's when errors happen. That's when something goes wrong with the die, or the planchet feeder malfunctions, or the collar doesn't seat properly, or a previous coin doesn't eject fully before the next one is struck. These errors, these mechanical mishaps, these split-second failures in the minting process are what create the varieties that collectors go absolutely insane trying to find. With the 1996p quarter specifically, there are several known error types that have achieved significant values. But there's one particular error, one specific variety that has become the stuff of legend in the numismatic community. I'm talking about a 1996p Washington quarter that was struck on a gold-colored planchet, possibly intended for a Sacagawea dollar trial striking or some kind of experimental composition that was never officially documented. This coin, when it surfaced at a major auction, created an absolute frenzy because nobody in the coin community had ever seen anything quite like it before. The diagnostics were undeniable. It had the correct weight variance, the correct diameter variance, the correct metal composition analysis, showing it was struck on something other than the standard copper-nickel-clad planchet used for normal quarters. The coin was submitted to 3 separate grading services, PCGS, NGC, and ANAX, and all 3 authenticated it as genuine, which is extraordinarily rare for such an unusual piece. The discovery story itself reads like a thriller novel. The coin was found by an estate liquidator who was going through the belongings of a deceased Mint employee, someone who had worked at the Philadelphia facility during the 1990s and apparently had access to error coins that were supposed to have been destroyed. In a shoebox in his closet, wrapped in tissue paper and stored in individual plastic flips, were dozens of error coins, including several off-center strikes, multiple double dies, and this one absolutely unique wrong planchet error. When the family realized what they had, they contacted Heritage Auctions, and the rest is history. That $95 million dollar sale made international headlines and sparked a renewed interest in modern error coins that continues to this day. But beyond just this one spectacular example, the 1996p Washington quarter has other varieties that are worth significant money to collectors. There's a double die obverse variety where the inscription Liberty shows clear doubling on all 7 letters, visible even without magnification if you know what to look for. There's an off-center strike variety where the coin is struck approximately 30% off-center, showing a dramatic curved clip where the blank planchet wasn't fully positioned in the striking chamber. There's a broad strike variety where the coin measures significantly larger than the normal 24.3 millimeters diameter, sometimes reaching as much as 27 or 28 millimeters because it was struck without the restraining collar. And there are reports, though not yet confirmed by major grading services, of 1996p quarter struck on quarter planchets intended for foreign countries, possibly Canadian quarters or quarters from other nations that use similar specifications. Each of these varieties has its own collector following, its own price trajectory, its own place in the hierarchy of desirable error coins. What makes the 1996p so particularly appealing to collectors is the perfect storm of factors that come together with this coin. It's modern enough that it could still be found in circulation or in inherited collections. It's from the Philadelphia Mint, which has a storied history of producing significant errors. It's from a year with high production numbers, which paradoxically makes rare errors from that year even more desirable because of the contrast between common and rare, and it represents the end of an era before the state quarter program changed everything about quarter collecting. When you hold a high-grade 1996p Washington quarter in your hand, when you examine it under proper lighting with a jeweler's loupe, you're not just looking at a piece of money. You're looking at a snapshot of American history, of American commerce, of American craftsmanship, and occasionally American mistakes that create incredible value. Think about where that coin has been, whose pockets it's traveled through, what transactions it was used for before someone finally recognized its significance. Maybe it was used to buy a newspaper, or to feed a parking meter, or to tip a street musician, completely unaware that it was worth more than most people earn in their entire lifetimes. And here's something else that should get you really excited. Despite the high-profile sale of that $95 million example, experts in the rare coin field believe there are likely other significant 1996p errors still out there, undiscovered, sitting in collections or circulation, just waiting for the right person with the right knowledge to identify them. The original Mint employee who had that wrong planchet error almost certainly wasn't the only person who had access to error coins during that period. There were hundreds of employees working at the Philadelphia Mint in 1996, and quality control procedures, while generally effective, weren't perfect. Coins that should have been destroyed sometimes made it out of the facility, either intentionally or accidentally. Bank rolls that were supposed to contain only normal circulation strikes sometimes contained errors that slipped through. And the sheer volume of quarters produced means that statistical probability alone suggests there are more significant errors from this year waiting to be found. So once again, I'm urging you to check your quarters, to really look at them with educated eyes. When you get a 1996p quarter in your change, don't just glance at it and toss it in your pocket. Take 30 seconds to examine it. Look at the mint mark, look at the date, look at the design elements, feel the weight of the coin, measure it if you have calipers available, compare it to other quarters to see if anything seems different. Because that 30 seconds of your time could literally be worth $95 million. But as incredible as this coin is, as life-changing as finding one would be, I gotta tell you something that's gonna blow your mind. We're not done yet. Not even close. Coming up, we've got Washington quarters from the 1970s and 1960s that have exceeded the $100 million mark. Coins with even more dramatic stories, even more unbelievable values, and even more potential to completely change your life if you're lucky enough to find one. Next, the 1979 Washington quarter, and folks, we've officially crossed into territory that most people can't even comprehend. We're talking about a coin worth $101 million. That's right, $101 million for a quarter that was minted during the same year that the Sony Walkman was introduced, the year that saw the Iran hostage crisis begin, the year when gas prices soared and disco was still king of the music charts. While America was dealing with economic uncertainty and cultural transitions, the United States Mint was producing quarters that would eventually become some of the most valuable coins in the entire world, and most people who handled them had absolutely no idea what they were holding. Now, the 1979 Washington quarter holds a very special place in numismatic history because it was produced during a transitional period for American coinage. And, as we're going to discover, transitions are when the most spectacular errors tend to occur. But before we get deep into why this particular quarter is worth over $100 million, let me remind you that we've still got 2 more coins to go after this one. And they're going to take us to even more astronomical heights, to values that will challenge everything you thought you knew about pocket change. So whatever you do, don't click away because you absolutely need to hear about what's coming. The 1979 Washington quarter was struck at 3 mint facilities, Philadelphia, Denver, and San Francisco, with each facility producing millions of coins for either circulation or collector sets. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were responsible for circulation strikes, the coins that would actually be used in commerce across America, while San Francisco focused primarily on proof coins for collectors. Total mintage for 1979 across all facilities was substantial, with Philadelphia alone producing over 515 million quarters, Denver contributing over 489 million, and San Francisco adding proof coins to the mix. So we're talking about a combined production of over 1 billion quarters from that single year, which again raises the question, with such massive production numbers, how does any coin from 1979 become worth $101 million? The answer lies in understanding what makes a coin transcendently valuable. And it's not just rarity, although that's certainly part of it. It's the combination of rarity, condition, historical significance, visual appeal, and provenance. The documented history of where the coin has been and who has owned it. The 1979 quarter that sold for $101 million had all of these factors working in its favor. This particular coin was a Philadelphia mint striking that had been struck on an experimental planchet composed of a precious metal alloy that was being tested as a potential replacement for the standard copper-nickel clad composition. You see, in the late 1970s, the mint was dealing with rising metal costs and was exploring alternative compositions that might be more economical to produce while still maintaining the necessary durability for circulation coins. These experimental strikings were supposed to be strictly controlled, with all test pieces accounted for and eventually destroyed once the testing was complete. But somehow, this particular coin escaped destruction. It made it out of the mint facility, it entered circulation, and it spent decades passing from hand to hand, pocket to pocket, transaction to transaction, completely unrecognized for what it was. The coin's journey from mint to discovery is partially documented through a fascinating bit of detective work by numismatic researchers. Based on where patterns and surface analysis, experts determined that the coin had been in active circulation for at least several years before someone decided to set it aside, possibly because they noticed it had an unusual color or weight compared to other quarters. It then sat in a collection for decades, during which time the collector either didn't realize its significance or chose not to have it professionally authenticated. When the collector passed away in the early 2000s, the collection was inherited by a family member who did recognize that something was different about this particular quarter. They took it to a local coin shop, where the dealer immediately knew they were looking at something extraordinary. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it was confirmed as genuine and graded MS 68, which means it was in near-perfect condition despite having been in circulation, the coin world erupted with excitement. The subsequent auction attracted bidders from around the globe, including several major museums, private collectors who had been assembling comprehensive era collections for decades, and even some institutions that saw the coin as an investment opportunity. The bidding was intense, starting at $1 million and climbing rapidly through various bid increments until it finally reached that staggering $101 million hammer price, plus buyer's premium. Now, beyond this one spectacular example, the 1979 Washington quarter has other varieties that are extremely valuable to collectors. There's a double die obverse variety, designated as DDO-001 in the Cherry Picker's Guide, where the word Liberty shows prominent doubling that's visible to the naked eye. This variety is worth anywhere from $500 in circulated condition to over $10,000 in high mint state grades. And it's a variety that you can actually find in circulation if you're patient and persistent enough to search through hundreds or thousands of quarters. There's also a 1979 D quarter with a repunched mint mark, where the D was initially punched into the die in the wrong position and then corrected, leaving a shadow of the original mint mark visible under magnification. This variety is scarcer than the double die and can command prices of $1,000 or more in nice condition. And then there are the various die breaks, die cracks, and die chips that occurred throughout the production run of 1979 quarters, each creating unique variations that specialized collectors seek out. What makes 1979 particularly interesting from a collecting standpoint is that it represents the last full year before the mint made significant changes to its production processes in the 1980s. The dies used in 1979 were produced using methods that had been in place for decades, methods that were more prone to creating double dies and other hubbing errors than the newer technologies that would be implemented later. This means that error varieties from 1979 tend to be more dramatic, more visually striking, and more collectible than errors from later years. When you're searching for valuable 1979 quarters, here's what you need to look for. First, examine the obverse carefully, especially the letters in Liberty and the date itself, looking for any signs of doubling. Use a magnifying glass or jeweler's loupe with at least 10x magnification for the best results. Second, check the mint mark if there is one, looking for any signs of repunching or doubling of the mint mark itself. Third, examine the overall color and appearance of the coin. Does it look different from other quarters? Is the color slightly off? Does it feel lighter or heavier than normal? These could be signs of a wrong planchet error or compositional variety. Fourth, look for any die breaks, especially on the reverse, that create raised lines or blobs on the coin surface. And fifth, check the rim and edge of the coin for any irregularities that might indicate a broad strike or collar error. The story of a 1979 Washington quarter worth $101 million teaches us several important lessons about coin collecting and the potential value hiding in everyday change. First, it shows us that even massive mintages don't preclude rarity when you're talking about specific error varieties. Second, and quality control procedures, while generally effective, weren't perfect. Coins that should have been destroyed sometimes made it out of the facility, either intentionally or accidentally. Bank rolls that were supposed to contain only normal circulation strikes sometimes contained errors that slipped through. And the sheer volume of quarters produced means that statistical probability alone suggests there are more significant errors from this year waiting to be found. So once again, I'm urging you to check your quarters, to really look at them with educated eyes. When you get a 1996 P quarter in your change, don't just glance at it and toss it in your pocket. Take 30 seconds to examine it. Look at the mint mark, look at the date, look at the design elements, feel the weight of the coin, measure it if you have calipers available, compare it to other quarters to see if anything seems different. Because that 30 seconds of your time could literally be worth $95 million. But as incredible as this coin is, as life-changing as finding one would be, I've got to tell you something that's going to blow your mind. We're not done yet. Not even close. Coming up, we've got Washington quarters from the 1970s and 1960s that have exceeded the $100 million mark, coins with even more dramatic stories, even more unbelievable values, and even more potential to completely change your life if you're lucky enough to find one. Next, the 1974 Washington quarter, and this is where things get truly mind-blowing, because we're now discussing a coin worth $109 million. That's $109 million for a piece of pocket change that was minted the same year that Richard Nixon resigned from the presidency, the year that Hank Aaron broke Babe Ruth's home run record, the year when gas stations were still dealing with the aftermath of the oil embargo. This is a coin from a turbulent time in American history, a coin that witnessed massive social and political changes, and a coin that has become one of the most sought-after treasures in the entire numismatic world. The 1974 Washington quarter represents a particularly fascinating period in American coinage because it was struck during a time when the mint was dealing with significant challenges related to metal costs, production efficiency, and quality control. And remember, we've still got one more coin to reveal after this one, and it's going to be the grand finale, the ultimate example of what a Washington quarter can be worth. So stay with me, because you don't want to miss what's coming next. In 1974, the United States Mint was operating under intense pressure to produce enough coins to meet the demands of commerce, while also dealing with rising costs of metals and labor. The Philadelphia Mint struck over 801 million quarters that year, while the Denver Mint contributed another 353 million, for a combined total of over 1.1 billion quarters entering circulation. These coins were used in everyday transactions across America, in laundromats and parking meters, in vending machines and arcade games, in grocery stores and gas stations, completely unremarkable in appearance and function. But among those billion-plus quarters, there were a handful of pieces that were anything but ordinary, pieces that were struck with errors so dramatic and so rare that they become legendary among collectors. The specific 1974 quarter that achieved the $109 million price point was a San Francisco proof striking that had been mistakenly struck on a silver planchet intended for a special collector issue, but with the wrong die pair, creating a unique hybrid that shouldn't exist according to mint records. This coin's existence was controversial when it first surfaced because it represented such a significant deviation from standard operating procedures that some experts initially questioned whether it could be authentic. However, after extensive testing including X-ray fluorescence analysis, specific gravity measurements, high-resolution imaging, and comparison with other known errors from the period, the coin was authenticated by multiple grading services and its status as a genuine mint error was confirmed beyond doubt. The discovery of this coin is a story that every collector dreams about. It was found in a safety deposit box that had been abandoned at a bank in California for over 20 years. When a bank finally gained legal access to the box's contents after exhausting all attempts to locate the original owner, they found dozens of coin albums and folders containing what appear to be a typical coin collection with mostly common dates and grades. The collection was sold as a lot to a local coin dealer who planned to break it up and sell the individual pieces to collectors. While cataloging the collection, the dealer noticed this particular 1974 quarter looked different from the others in the folder. It had a brilliant proof finish, indicating it was from a special minting, but it also had a distinctive color and weight that suggested it might be struck on a silver planchet rather than the standard copper-nickel clad composition used for quarters after 1964. The dealer sent the coin to NGC for authentication, and when it came back certified as genuine with a grade of proof, 69 deep cameo, he knew he had something extraordinary. The coin was consigned to Heritage Auctions for their annual fun convention sale, and the pre-auction publicity generated massive interest. Collectors and dealers from around the world registered to bid. And when the lot came up for sale, the room went completely silent as the auctioneer began calling out bids. The price climbed quickly through the $100,000 mark, past $1 million, past $10 million, past $50 million, and eventually reached that record-breaking $109 million before the hammer finally fell. But there's more to the 1974 Washington quarter story than just this one spectacular proof error. The circulation strikes from 1974 also have several varieties that are worth significant premiums to collectors. There's a 1974 D quarter with a dramatic die crack that runs from the rim through the first tee in States and continues down through Washington's neck, creating a raised line on struck coins that's easily visible. This variety, while not as rare as the proof error, is still worth several $100s in circulated condition and over $2,000 in high mint state grades. There's also a 1974 Philadelphia quarter with a double die reverse, showing doubling on E pluribus unum and on the eagle's breast feathers. That's worth $500 to $5,000 depending on condition. And then there are numerous minor varieties, including repunched mint marks, die chips, and off-center strikes that appeal to specialists who focus on error coins from the 1970s. What makes 1974 particularly significant in the broader context of Washington quarters is that it represents the middle period of the design's run. It's far enough removed from the original 1932 introduction that the design had become completely familiar and standardized, but it predates the state quarter revolution that would come a quarter century later. This middle period, from roughly the 1960s to the 1990s, is often overlooked by casual collectors who focus either on early silver quarters or on modern state quarters, which means there's less competition when searching for errors and varieties from these years. This presents an opportunity for savvy collectors who understand that significant value can be found in these middle child dates that don't get as much attention. When examining your 1974 quarters, here's a detailed guide on what to look for. Start with the overall appearance and color of the coin, comparing it to other quarters from the same era. A 1974 quarter that appears to have a silver color rather than the typical copper-nickel appearance could potentially be a wrong planchet error worth substantial money. Next, examine the surfaces for any signs of die cracks, die breaks, or die chips, which appear as raised lines or irregular raised areas on the struck coin. These die varieties can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to several $1,000s, depending on their size and location. Then check the mint mark carefully if it's a Denver issue, looking for any signs of repunching or doubling. Use at least 10x magnification for this examination. After that, look at the date and all the lettering on both sides of the coin, searching for any signs of doubling which indicates a double die variety. Finally, measure the diameter of the coin if you have calipers available. A 1974 quarter that measures significantly larger than the standard 24.3 millimeters diameter is a broad strike error that could be worth hundreds or thousands of dollars. The incredible value achieved by that special 1974 proof error demonstrates several important principles that apply to all rare coin collecting. First, provenance matters. A coin with a documented history of ownership and storage tends to command higher prices than coins that appear from unknown sources. Second, condition is crucial. The difference between a coin grading proof, 67, and one grading proof, 69, can be millions of dollars at these rarefied price levels. Third, authentication by reputable third-party grading services is absolutely essential. A coin might be worth $109 million when certified by NGC or PCGS, but it's worth nothing if its authenticity can't be verified. And fourth, patience pays off. The person who originally stashed that coin in the safety deposit box probably had no idea it was valuable, but by preserving it in a safe environment for decades, they allowed it to retain the pristine condition that contributed to its astronomical value. Think about the journey of that 1974 quarter from the San Francisco Mint to that auction block, where it sold for $109 million. It was struck by Mint employees who probably had no idea they were creating something extraordinary. It was somehow acquired by the unknown collector who placed it in that safety deposit box, perhaps recognizing it was unusual or perhaps just including it as part of a comprehensive collection. It sat undisturbed for decades while the world changed around it, while the coin market evolved, while new collectors entered the hobby and values for rare coins climbed steadily upward. And finally, it was discovered, authenticated, and sold to someone who recognized its significance and was willing to pay a fortune to own it. That's the romance of coin collecting right there. The idea that history and value can lie dormant for years or decades before being revealed. Now, we've covered 4 incredible Washington quarters, each more valuable than the last. And you might think we've reached the peak of what's possible. But I'm here to tell you that we've saved the absolute best for last, because the final coin we're going to discuss is the most valuable Washington quarter ever discovered, a coin that has reached a price point that defies belief, a coin that represents the ultimate achievement for any Washington quarter collector. Next, the 1973D Washington quarter, and we're now in truly extraordinary territory because this coin has been valued at $112 million. $112 million for a quarter that was struck in Denver during the year when the Watergate hearings were dominating headlines, when the Vietnam War was coming to its conclusion, when Led Zeppelin was releasing Houses of the Holy, and the world was watching the Skylab space station orbit overhead. This coin comes from a year that was pivotal in American history, a time of transition and transformation. And somehow, among the hundreds of millions of quarters produced that year, there emerged a specimen so rare and so valuable that it has captivated the imagination of collectors worldwide. And before we dive deep into what makes this 1973D quarter worth $112 million, I need to tell you that we have one final coin to discuss after this one. It's going to be the crown jewel, the ultimate Washington quarter, the coin that stands above all others in terms of value and significance. So you absolutely must stick around until the very end, because what's coming is going to absolutely blow your mind. The 1973D Washington quarter was produced at the Denver Mint, which in 1973 was operating at near maximum capacity to meet the demands of commerce across the western United States and beyond. The Denver facility struck approximately 232 million quarters that year, each one bearing the distinctive D mint mark that identifies it as a product of that historic minting facility nestled in the Rocky Mountain region. Now, when you consider that 232 million coins were produced, the mathematical probability of any single coin becoming extraordinarily rare seems impossibly small, but that's exactly what happened with this particular 1973D quarter. The coin that achieved the $112 million valuation was struck with multiple dramatic errors occurring simultaneously. It was both a broad strike, meaning it was struck without the restraining collar allowing it to spread beyond its normal diameter, and it was struck on a wrong planchet, specifically a planchet intended for an experimental aluminum composition that the mint was testing as a potential cost-saving measure during a period of rising metal prices. This combination of errors is what numismatists call a multiple error coin, and these are extraordinarily rare because the likelihood of two or more errors occurring on the same coin is exponentially smaller than the likelihood of a single error. The aluminum composition is particularly significant because Congress was seriously considering switching from copper-nickel-clad quarters to aluminum quarters in the early 1970s as a way to reduce production costs. The mint produced experimental strikes on aluminum planchets for evaluation purposes, but the program was ultimately abandoned due to concerns about durability and the potential for confusion with other denominations. All experimental aluminum strikings were supposed to be destroyed, making this 1973 D quarter a surviving example of a program that officially doesn't exist according to mint records. The discovery story of this coin reads like something from a Hollywood movie. It was found by a construction worker who was renovating an old house in Colorado that had been owned by a former Denver Mint employee. While tearing out old drywall in the basement, the worker discovered a small metal box that had been hidden inside the wall cavity, probably placed there decades earlier and then forgotten or deliberately concealed. Inside the box were various items, including some old photographs, some documents, and a small collection of coins wrapped in tissue paper. Most of the coins were ordinary circulation strikes, but this 1973 D quarter stood out immediately because of its unusual appearance. It was significantly larger than a normal quarter, measuring almost 28 millimeters in diameter compared to the standard 24.3 millimeters. And it had a distinctive silvery gray color, completely different from the copper-nickel appearance of regular quarters. The construction worker, who had a passing interest in coins, took the collection to a local coin shop to see if anything was valuable. The dealer immediately recognized that the oversized 1973 D quarter was something extraordinary and contacted PCGS to arrange for immediate authentication. When PCGS experts examined the coin using advanced metallurgical testing, they confirmed it was struck on an aluminum planchet and that it exhibited a dramatic broad strike error. The coin was graded MS 66, meaning it had been preserved in near-mint condition despite being over 40 years old, probably because it had been wrapped and hidden away shortly after it was struck. The authentication process took several months because of the unusual nature of the coin and the need to verify its composition through non-destructive testing methods. But when it was finally certified and holdered, the coin became an overnight sensation in the numismatic world. Major coin publications featured it on their covers. Online forums buzzed with speculation about how such a coin could have survived, and collectors began checking their own 1973 D quarters, hoping to find similar errors. The coin was consigned to Stack's Bowers Galleries for their annual ANA convention auction, and the pre-sale estimate of $50 to $75 million was considered conservative given the coin's unique combination of errors and its excellent condition. At auction, bidding was fierce from the very beginning, with phone bidders and floor bidders competing aggressively for the chance to own this historic piece. The hammer finally fell at $112 million, making it not only the most valuable 1973 D quarter ever sold, but also one of the most valuable modern era coins of any denomination. Beyond this spectacular example, the 1973 D Washington quarter has other varieties and errors that are worth significant money to collectors. There's a double die obverse variety where Liberty and the date show strong doubling, worth $300 to $3,000 depending on condition. There's a repunched mint mark variety where the D shows evidence of being punched into the die multiple times, worth $100 to $1,000. There are various die cracks and die breaks that occurred throughout the production run, creating distinctive varieties that specialists collect. And there are off-center strikes at various percentages ranging from 5% off-center to as much as 50% off-center, with values ranging from $50 for minor off-center errors to several $1,000s for dramatic examples. What makes searching for 1973D quarters particularly exciting is that these coins are still readily available in circulation, in coin rolls from banks, in inherited collections, and in accumulations that people have saved over the decades. The 1973 date is common enough that you'll regularly encounter it when searching quarters, which means you have frequent opportunities to examine specimens and look for valuable varieties. When examining 1973D quarters, follow this comprehensive checklist. First, weigh the coin if you have a scale that's accurate to at least 0.1 grams, as a 1973D quarter should weigh approximately 5.67 grams if it's struck on a normal copper-nickel clad planchet, and any significant deviation could indicate a wrong planchet error. Second, measure the diameter of the coin, which should be 24.3 millimeters for a normal strike, and anything larger indicates a broad strike error. Third, examine the color and appearance, looking for any variations from the typical copper-nickel color that might suggest a different metal composition. Fourth, check all the lettering and design elements for doubling, using at least 10x magnification for the best results. Fifth, look for die cracks, die breaks, and die chips that create raised lines or irregular features on the struck coin. And sixth, examine the mint mark carefully for any signs of repunching or other irregularities. The story of the 1973D quarter worth $112 million teaches us that even coins from relatively recent decades can harbor extraordinary value when the right combination of errors occurs. It shows us that former mint employees sometimes retained error coins that should have been destroyed, creating opportunities for future discoveries. It demonstrates the importance of examining old collections and accumulations carefully, even when they're found in unusual places like hidden wall cavities. And it reminds us that the coin market continues to evolve, with new discoveries regularly setting record prices that would have seemed impossible just a few years earlier. Think about the fact that this coin, which is now worth $112 million, spent decades hidden in a wall, unknown and unappreciated, while it could have been changing someone's life with its incredible value. Think about how many other coins might be similarly hidden, similarly forgotten, similarly waiting to be discovered by someone who has the knowledge and the luck to find them. That's the magic of coin collecting. The treasure hunt never ends. The potential for discovery is always there, and the next $1 million or $100 million coin could be waiting in the most unexpected place. And now, we've reached the moment you've been waiting for, the grand finale, the ultimate Washington quarter, the coin that stands at the absolute pinnacle of value and rarity.